It's just me and Moon, so I can say whatever I want. We are prototyping stuff, and we are prototyping it now. That is sort of would fall into the category of what we call gadgets, right? The first gadget we introduced into the game was the smoke grenade, and that would be like that. So we sort of think of it as like gadgets are loot, just like weapons, just like armor, just like anything else. You'd have to find it, you'd have to bring it in with you, or find it in the map if you wanted to use it. And there's going to be a lot of stuff in the tower that we're talking about that might require gadgets. And that's going to be the sort of stuff that sort of helps you decide, what do I want to take in the tower, right? So if you're like, oh, hey, I know I want to go to this sector because I'm doing a quest for this specific item, and I know if I have a wingsuit, I have an additional extraction option. That's how we want you thinking about gadgets and stuff like that. It's planning your run around it, planning your strategy around it.
Hello.
Bring them up. And if it goes horribly wrong, kick them out immediately.
I guess I got to rebrand to Kentucky Raw now.
Yeah. How do you say it?
It's Cairo. You got it right. You're actually one of the few that gets it right on the first try. So props.
Yeah. Got it right on the first try and then ruined it after.
So I have a few questions. I posted a whole list, but I'll just rapid fire them real quick for you. One that's probably going to get asked a lot is when are new tower keys? A lot of us that grind the game like every day. I mean, as you know, with these events, it's been really nice because we've got to see an increase in lobbies like throughout basically the entire day for like every week. But you know, like a lot of us are late night degens that want to just grind the game, and getting into repeated like 3-person, 4-person lobbies is just it's pretty hard to practice. And I know it's just a snapshot, but yeah, one of the ones I'm most curious about is when are new tower keys?
Great question. Do not know yet. But there will be more expansions that come, right, where we're expanding the audience. Just to give you a little context into the decision making behind that, we've always said this, right, is like access to the game is not a way for us to make money. It's a community building tool. And we build it based on the needs of the game. So, for example, we were introducing, the tower, the first time into the tower, the play space was going to be bigger, the player count was going to be increased, so we wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to have fuller lobbies, more players in. And luckily it worked exactly as we planned, right? We started getting full lobbies, we started learning a lot about not just how the game plays or how sectors play at that scale, but we also learned a lot about how people can be super shitty. Right, which allowed us to identify things like adding in our player moderation, our banning ability, our voice moderation stuff, adding in the ability to mute. And that's exactly why we sort of grow the user base in the way we do, is so that it helps us identify features or pacing and stuff like that. Because one of the things that we were trying to decide for the tower is like, how big should a sector be? Right? Because we could go massive. We could go where every sector is gigantic and like they're huge play spaces, but does that feel good? Like at what player count does that feel good? Because you got to understand that when we have 7 sectors, right? Say we have 100-player match. They're going to be spread across 7 sectors. So we want to make sure that like the amount of time in between engagements feels good. And right now, like I don't know how many of us in this room have got to experience a full lobby of like 36 players, but 36 feels pretty good, I think, in the current size of a sector.
Yeah, it feels pretty full whenever you get a lobby around there. I mean, honestly, anything over 15 feels really, really nice for the current sector that we have, I think. I don't want to hold you up too much on that one. The other ones, I'm really curious on. We've seen precedent set with amplifying creators. Now that we had the creator-hosted events, I was one of those that was selected to run one, and I'm really honored to be able to do that. But I was just wondering, what are the future plans for creator amplification, and like, how does DEADROP plan to continue like fostering those relationships between the people that are creating content around the game? I think like one thing that I would like to see would be like maybe a Twitter dedicated to amplifying like clips or like community created content or something like that. I don't know if that's in the plans.
Nice. Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff in the plans, and we are open to almost anything. So any ideas that you have of ways that we can amplify or boost our creators, everything we've been doing so far has just organically happened, right? Like we're discovering people like Mayor Reynolds and Helmet Fire and yourself and people who are just naturally, organically creating killer content around the game. And then that inspires us to figure out like, oh, how can we do more with that, right? Lucy Moon is always sort of tracking that stuff, looking at that stuff, figuring out ways that we can help you guys or engage them. So I would definitely work with her as our community manager to be like, hey, I have an idea for this. And we'll be open for anything, right? Like the name's escaping me right now, but we did that that one event. Oh man, what is the guy's name? I feel terrible now. He does the Simon Says games. Swifter, yes. We did the Swifter Says, sort of thing for him. And so if you have ideas, like throw it at Moon, right? Like the worst she can say is like, oh, not right now, or like, oh, let us think about that. But we're also always looking at feature stuff. A lot of stuff we're doing right now is, we're working on the creative mode stuff that we teased at the Texas event. That is going to empower creators to do all kinds of crazy shit. With private lobbies and custom modes and like build out stuff just for their community or just for their content. And I think that's going to be the area that we can do a lot of stuff to allow them to create content. But then to also answer your question on the other side, how can we help amplify that? Man, we're open to anything, right? Of like any way that we can boost it or give it more presence. Does it make sense to have a dedicated Twitter though? Or does it make sense to find ways to sort of amplify that to the main channels?
Oh, the main channels would obviously be ideal. I think that like just seeing like having a way to filter out like what content should be, I don't know, retweeted or amplified through that would be cool. But I mean, you've answered the question. That sounds like you guys have really good plans and are open to it, which is a really good sign in my opinion. I'll just ask one more. Back to the custom lobbies that you were just talking about. I hope it's not a problem if I ask a little bit about that, but I think that's something that like the community is really, really hyped about. Is that going to be like custom lobbies like in Apex, I can create a custom lobby and then invite a whole bunch of people with a code? Or is that going to be like I can create an arena style match? Like I can set the game up to be like a capture the flag style thing or something like that. I'm sorry if this information's out there already. I just am curious.
It's not out there. We've only teased it at the Texas event. It's eventually going to be like whatever you want to do, right? The dream, the goal of how we're building this game is we want you to eventually be able to do everything that we can do on the design side, right? But the first implementation of that is going to be custom modes where it's like, hey, take DEADROP, take the game that we've made, and then tailor it to whatever you want. So maybe you're like, hey, I want to limit it to just Sector 3, and I want to add capture the flag points, and I want to set a score limit and take away respawns.
Yeah,
right?
This sounds like a cracked out Forge mode. This sounds awesome. Like, that would be so good for the community.
Right, but initially we're looking at modes and not sort of like full on like build a level from scratch. Eventually we'd want to get to the point where build a level from scratch, but we're going to take it step by step, stage by stage. Because again, we don't want to sort of like hide away in a corner and build this massive creative mode and never let you see it until it's fully featured. Like we would want to be like, hey, custom game modes are available. Here they are. Have fun with them. Why we build out the map editor or we build out some other aspect of it, right?
Right. Okay, last question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna do a little spiel at the end of like, and just like everything else, the depth and features of creative mode are going to be determined by the people here, right? So if like there's something you guys are loving and you want more of, and you're like, hey, can we have more of this options or more abilities to do this? If people are asking for it, that's what we're going to focus on, right? If we put out a creative mode and like everybody's having fun with custom just game modes and nobody wants to build a map, then we're probably not going to spend the time making a map editor.
Yeah, understood. No, that's awesome. That I think that has a lot of potential for community involvement, which would be really cool. I'll just go one more and then I'll get off the stage so I don't take all your guys' time. My question is, when is the hideout and or some sort of firing range returning? I think there were some previous members on the team that worked on Advanced Warfare, and that was I used to compete a lot in Call of Duty and Apex, and one of the things I really loved about some of the old Call of Duties was the firing range that you can get into while you're like loading into a match. Right now, we just adjusted queue times to like around 3 minutes, which in my opinion is a really great thing because we do get way more full lobbies. But during that 3 minutes, I would love if I could hop in with any of the guns in my stash and have like a very quick, seamless firing range. Not one where I had to like go through like in the old one in the hideout, you had to like go into the hideout, you had to go pick up your gun, and then you have like a couple of targets right there to shoot. I think something that is like more aim focused, like if you get into like Kovacs or aim labs, you have like grid that everyone loves to shoot like a 3x3 grid or whatever. Having something like that in a firing range, or like being able to quickly pick up a weapon and modify the attachments on it to be able to get more of a feel for the weapon before games. I think that's something that would be really, really cool to see.
Yeah. So I can't tell you the snapshot or date that the hideout's coming back. I can tell you that it is coming back. Currently, it's getting a full redesign and revamp. Originally, it served the purpose of like, hey, there's nothing else to do in the game but the player hideout. So go in there, test out the weapons. There's 3 different trials that have 3 different styles to them. And it served a very specific purpose. Now that the player hideout has grown into being like your full pregame lobby, like it's where you and your squad are going to hang out and plan stuff. It's where you're going to interact with people like Space Bob. It's where you're going to do like there's stuff to do beyond the firing range. Your garage is there, access to your vehicles, all that stuff exists in the player hideout, right? Now that is the case, we're redesigning it to be a little bit more like conducive to like getting into a match quickly and having everything like in close proximity, right? What we don't want you to do is we don't want you to be like, oh, I'm matchmaking for 3 minutes. Let me spend, half that time running across the map to get to the firing range I want to go to, right?
Right, exactly.
So we're changing up the layout. It's also, going to get plussed up from the art standpoint. Excuse me. And so once it's ready, like once it's sort of like has all that rework done to it, then we will be reintroducing it into a very specific hideout or into a very specific snapshot. I will tell you, probably not Snapshot 6.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you to you both, and I really appreciate you guys doing this for the community. This is a really nice thing. I hope you guys continue to do these. But thank you.
Cool. Thanks, man. Chris, 1982. Great year to be born, Chris. Will there be bots added in the future to fill up the lobbies? Currently, player base in the lobby is low. So we've been working on AI for a while. I've talked last year about how, as we get into the expansion year, which we're in right now with 2023, there's going to be some features that are just so big that they take multiple snapshots to create, right? So we'll be working on them for months before you even get to see them. AI is one of those things. Dave Walker has been working on AI since the day he started months ago. And he's incredible. They're going really good. I actually think that the team is in an AI playtest right now that I'm missing, so I can be here. So thanks for that, Chris 1982. But I would much rather be here. I'm just kidding. I would much rather be in that playtest checking out how the AI is doing. But so to answer your question, yes, they are coming. We're currently working on them now. I can't tell you when they're coming, but they're getting very close and they're feeling real good. A lot of stuff with AI development is first the foundational stuff. Get them working, get them understanding the world, get them traversing around, get them understanding how to react to certain things like being shot, engaging, aggro, all of that stuff. Then you start working on their decision tree stuff of like, all right, if this happens, then they respond this way. If this happens and this parameter is set, right? Like, oh, if they get shot, obviously they go aggro. If they get shot and they're already wounded, maybe they go more defensive. You start layering in those if-ands decision-making trees to them. And then we're beyond that stage, right? Then you get to the point of like, hey, how do we like give them their personality, right? Like, how do they enter the match? How do they exit the match? What do they do? What is their like animation style? Start getting the stuff that gives them like the life and personality. And that is the stage that we are in now, is making them cool is how I call it. Young Squeezy says, any potential plans for future third-person mode? I vaguely recall Doc mentioning how COD with third person felt very fluid back then when he was working on their game. I'm curious if DEADROP might be open to having a third person. We are open to it. So the nice thing is, I don't know if we will have, I don't know when or if we would have a third person mode for like the core DEADROP extraction shooter experience, because like the balancing of the game completely changes once you change the camera perspective, right? But we are definitely open and already supporting the concept of third-person camera. But we might leave that for you guys to do whatever you want in creative mode, right? So if you want to, if one of you guys wants to create a third-person version of DEADROP and publish it as your own custom mode, and everybody plays that and gets really popular, then great, right? Like that's your mode, and you're getting the benefits of that. I don't know if we'll do it in our core mode, but the good news is how Brighton has set up our character system and all of that is we are true first person, which means that everything is based around your head. You have a full body. You can see everything. So we don't need to do any new special systems to support third person. I mean, not to say it's free. It's definitely not free. But we are sort of looking at it from, we are open to it in the future. Just don't know if we would do it in the core game mode.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great. Yeah, so I'll just start by saying I played one of the releases. The vertical extraction format is really neat. I didn't know what to expect, and it's so tense. Really good.
Nice.
So my question is, do you guys have an end-of-life plan for the game? So I'm talking like from a game preservation perspective, in 10 years, if Midnight Society doesn't want to support the game anymore, is the community going to be able to host its own servers? Have you guys built that into the game at all?
Yeah, short answer is yes. Not specifically, right? The yes is to building the game in the way that even if all of us died, that the game could live on and be run by the community and be added on by the community. So when I said earlier that we are building creative mode in a way that we want you to be able to do everything that we can do, I meant that literally. Like we are building the game in the way, assuming that everything that we have is going to be handed off to the public, and they are going to be able to continue to create original assets, create original guns, create original characters, build custom levels, publish custom game modes, import that stuff into the game and create its own thing, and then run those themselves, right? So I would love to build, like, I want to build, and how we are building it now from a foundational level is the game in a way that in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if the developers have moved on, if I have moved on, the team has moved on, and we're making game 2 or game 3, right? We're making something else, that DEADROP can live on for as long as the community wants it to live on, right? But then they would also be the ones creating the content for it and driving the direction of it and, you know, benefiting from that. That is how we are building it from a philosophical standpoint. And how I see it is our job is to build DEADROP, the core vertical extraction shooter mode, that is the showpiece for how to do that the way we think is best, right? And then lays down all the foundational systems that do it, right? Because what I want to see is, I want to see like, hey, we created 7 unique sectors that are all interconnected, and each one have their own sort of style, and there's a bunch of different ways you could traverse around, movement abilities, right? Like right now we have sliding and climbing and mantling and shimmying and zip lines and all of that. But we're going to be adding more ways to move around, right? Based on the sector design. And I would love for people to just take those, right? And maybe like right now we're working on vehicle stuff, right? Maybe somebody just takes that vehicle system and creates an entirely vehicle-focused experience, right? A game mode, and publishes that. And that becomes really popular, and that becomes the meta for like 3 months, right? Until somebody else makes something else. And like, I think that is the exciting part, is like, I want to come back to DEADROP in 15 years and play something that I had no part in making, but is inside DEADROP. And I'm like, oh shit, this is cool. And now I am playing my game as purely a fan and not as, anything else.
Awesome. That's a good I guess mindset. So my kind of follow-up to that would be, so Fortnite's creative mode is obviously very in-depth, but as far as I'm aware, Fortnite creative still relies on a central server. So
Yes.
Are you saying that this creative mode that you guys are creating would not necessarily rely on a central server?
Initially it will. Initially everything will, rely on our servers. But the eventual goal is to get to a place where it may not have to, right? But that's a ways off, right? We're talking far post-launch in the future. But I think in order to achieve the dream that I have, where we can be completely decentralized from the development of the game, that is the eventual way you would have to do it in the future. But initially, all of that creative mode, like custom game modes and stuff, will run through our backend and our system and our server farm and our matchmaking and all of that, right? But eventually, the goal would be to get to a point where it can be entirely self-sustained.
Cool. That's all I had. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. I just want to say, first off, it's so great to hear you guys. It's been a while since there's been an AMA, so I'm really thankful that you guys are doing that. So just huge thank you to that. And I also caught that little leak of you saying there's a vehicle system coming out. That is so freaking awesome. I'm super stoked for that. So I guess my first question is, a week ago, so he was really busy, and I know that he's one of the economists on the team. And I'm wondering, does that mean we're going to see progression in the game soon?
There will definitely be types of progression that are being added very soon. Most of the progression systems are coming later, but there's definitely a lot of progression plans for the game in a number of ways, right? Not just account progression, but we are laying the foundation for that stuff now. And then just like everything else, we will expand on that with other systems that use various aspects of the progression of your account. But yes, short answer is yes. It's coming fairly soon.
It's exciting. Okay, my second question is, are female player models going to be coming to the game soon? Yeah, just wondering.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? It was kind of echoey, so I didn't get the...
No, wait, are female player models coming to the game soon?
Custom player models?
Yeah, female player models.
Oh, female character models. So we are just now getting into like the characters and design stuff. We've been concepting a lot. So I know we've concepted a lot of female characters. Right now we've only been using the character model that we have, and then we removed his hair and turned his eyes red for the Syns. But now that we're getting into like more characters and more types of character designs, there's going to be like a lot of diversity to it. I don't know when. Like I don't even know if we've decided what our first character model is. But I know we have like a lot of female character concepts, a lot of male character concepts. A lot of the AI, like the cleaners, are like gender neutral. Like there's no way to even tell what they are. So short answer is yes. I don't know when. I don't even know when the first real character model will make it in.
Gotcha. And for my final question, are you guys planning on implementing something tighter than the ponytail anytime?
Tighter than what?
Like,
oh, like a different hairstyle? Yes.
great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Jay White says, are you planning any kind of create a class or leveling system for players? We are. It's in the earliest stages, and that's sort of the progression system that Narnia was asking about. Is like, I like create a class is like interesting. Like, saving a loadout. Like right now, you build a loadout on the fly based on your inventory. I don't know if it makes sense for us to have a traditional create a class system like that, like we used to do in Call of Duty, because your inventory is always changing, right? Like if you're going in and you die and you lose something that was in a saved class, and that class is broken, right? So it probably will not work that way, but there will be leveling systems, what we call mastery right now, of like we are experimenting with ways to master classes of weapons. But that stuff is in early development for us to figure out exactly how we want it to work. But the general idea is like, oh, you might lose a gun, but you didn't lose your mastery of that weapon. So like, oh, if you find that class of weapon again, you already know how to use it more effectively than you did before. That's a sort of stuff that we're doing. All right, Whiskey Devil says, will founders have any other role to play soon? Currently, I feel like we are just claws with a mask, and being a founder isn't as important as before. Voting on features, the eyes. The role of founders is constantly expanding. But yes, as we just introduced the player reporting system, which is being used for reporting problematic stuff. I'd like to continue to expand that system into like a voting feature system, giving feedback on the game directly inside the game, stuff that founders can use to more easily identify, especially as the game grows and gets bigger and more expansive. Filling out a survey isn't going to cut it, right? So I want there to be an ability for you to like be in the game, be playing in a very specific area, and be like, oh, let me file an ideal or a vote specifically for this thing right now. And that will continue to expand as the creative mode and the UGC stuff comes online. Founders are going to be highly important in curating and identifying the direction and the focus of that stuff, right? How that will, like the logistics of that, I do not know yet. But it is always planned. Like if you look at my flow chart of how UGC publishing works, there's always that point that it goes through the sort of founding committee to decide like, oh, does this where does this fit, right? Is this something that should just live in creative mode? Should this be something that is like promoted to the main experience? Is this something that should be like elevated beyond just the sea of all the other creations? Is this something that should exist in the game at all? Should this be included in a battle pass? Things like that are stuff that's going to be decided and influenced very heavily by founders in the future. Doc's tweet about $100,000 thing stirred a lot of pots. It sure fucking did. And lots of people are concerned if we're going to be extracting with items that have real world value. Oh God, what the game is going to be loaded with cheaters because of it. We know you obviously have anti-cheat, but can you tell us more about what you're thinking to combat this? Oh my God, man. If there was ever a more important topic, and I know I saw Jason down there earlier. I don't know if he's still in the chat. But I'm sure he's losing his fucking mind right now with this question, because we literally talk about this so much every single day. Like, and here's the thing, it has nothing to do. Like, yes, it is more substantial if there's real world value to it, right? But it also is kind of irrelevant because we are building an extraction shooter, which means that everything that you bring into the game has meaning to you because you earned it. Like, you went in, you killed somebody, you found that weapon, you found that gear. Your loadout is valuable to you, regardless of real world value, right? So that means the fact that you can go in, you can lose anything because it's a high risk, high reward experience. That means that cheating is the number one thing that we have to worry about, period. Because it is core to the experience. Because if there is cheating, if there is unfair ways to lose your stuff, it is more substantial than it is in a Call of Duty, right? Because I worked on Call of Duty for, forever. And cheating just did not warrant the investment, the time that you would need to put in to stop it, because the only thing you were losing besides your fucking sanity was your win-loss stat, right? And combating cheating effectively requires you to have every single department aligned. And we were just talking about this internally. Every single department in the company needs to be aligned on the goal of solving this problem, and it needs to be inherent in everything we do. So we are going to be brutal and zero tolerance on that sort of stuff, right? Like the fact that we and that extends, all the way from like legit hacking to like exploiting, right? It's like, yeah, finding exploits is fun and there is an element to it, and we should be doing that right now in this stage of development. Like that's why we are playtesting as a community, is to find ways to break the game so that we can fix it for launch. But the moment that it's like identified and we can address it, like anybody trying to exploit for their personal gain or to ruin the experience of others, like literally have zero tolerance, no place in the community. And so all of our sort of approaches from anti-cheat, and I saw somebody mention in chat earlier that we should implement AI anti-cheat. I 100% agree. But it's not the silver bullet. It's really going to take everything from like the hardcore, authentication stuff that like Valorant does, to the AI anti-cheat that is constantly looking for the new developing ways to do it, to how we design the economy and features of the game to ensure that if something slips through, right, that there is a way to rectify it before the victim actually loses anything. So we are sort of thinking about it. Every single design decision we make and every feature decision we make goes through that sort of like brain trust of like, okay, how do we prevent this from being exploited? And then if it is exploited, how do we prevent the victim from not suffering from that exploitation? And then how do we address the person that is the attacker, and then rectify the situation? So those sort of like full things are something that we think about with every single feature. So it is huge. It is literally the biggest thing and one of the biggest investments we will make as a company, which most people don't do because they don't have to do, right? It's not a fault of other companies that they won't invest the way that we do in anti-cheat. It's that because we are an extraction shooter, inherently by the design of our genre, we have to have it be the biggest feature of our game. I hope that answered your question. And I hope that when I started answering it, Jason's butthole puckered up just a little bit more. Next. Yeah. I should check Slack to see if he's messaging me. No, not yet. Sure.
Hey guys, you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hope you're doing well today. I had a couple questions here. First and foremost, I was wondering, are claws going to have any kind of voting rights at any point? Like maybe just creative insight or like input of any kind? Maybe it could be in like a tiered structure, like with each snapshot. I don't know if you guys are going to open the floodgates a little bit each time and then close them. Maybe like the older claws can get some more input there or something like that. I don't know. I just think it'd be cool to have some creative input. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get an NFT anytime soon, so just curious on that.
Yeah, it's fluid and we're figuring it out, and a lot of it will be determined by the existing founders, right? But like everybody in the community has input, right? We are constantly looking, just in normal community interactions. Lucy is constantly looking at feedback and what people are saying. So they definitely have influence. Whether they'll have the tangible like voting rights and ability to like decide, like be the decision makers on things, I don't know. Like the intent was always to be that committee of decision making and heavy influence was always like a tight brain trust of group, right? And I think you lose elements of that the bigger and wider it gets. Not to say that it won't get bigger, right? It might continue to expand, and we might find more ways to be involved. But I think right now the focus of Claws is to give that play feedback, right? To play the game, put it through its paces, let us know what's fun, what's not fun, and give a lot of that subjective feedback the same way that every player of the game gives it. But like how much sort of voting rights they'll have in the future, I don't know. But anything's possible.
I get you. That answers my question. I suppose more just creative input. I don't really know how much I guess is heard. I haven't really tried. I didn't want to be annoying with a bunch of random ideas, I guess. But the other question I had was related to, I was wondering whether like the DEADROP might eventually become a bit more of like a game event. Originally I kind of envisioned maybe like a golden bag or something like that like kind of transcends through the tower, stops at like various points through the tower just to keep players consistently going to a certain point on the map. I know this is just a random idea, but I was just wondering if there's future kind of game. I guess there's game modes already planned. I know that's already been mentioned, but
yeah, no. Even inside the core DEADROP game mode, we have talked about like in-session events that occur for exactly the reason that you touched on, right? Like reasons to drive players to specific POIs in a map. And we talked about it a lot when we came up with like the sector shutdown stuff. Like right now in Sector 3, it's the Rising Freeze, right? That drives players to the top. But we had talked about maybe even in Sector 3 introducing events like that where like something spawns and there's a reason to go there, or players have the ability to like shut down an area, and while it's shut down, like they're trapped in that POI with everybody else who's there, but also like maybe loot spawns increase during that moment, right? Like something's generating stuff. So yes, like I love the ideal, and it's definitely something we're probably going to explore in other sectors and maybe tower wide. I don't think it'll be tied to the DEADROP though. I think it will be its own system if we did it.
yeah, it makes sense. Cool. Good to know. The only last thing I just really wanted to ask was like, is there any like countdown or anything like that you guys might implement on the Midnight Society website for like future snapshots, just to kind of get hyped around it and stuff? I know you can't give certain dates, and you might need to push it occasionally, but it might keep me going to the site and looking for updates, I guess. Yeah,
that's a good idea. And I think right now we're getting better and better at solidifying like when we want things to drop. Like as you know, we're a year in now, so we've got a pretty good handle on how long it's taking us to do some of these like features and stuff like that. The first year it was every 6 to 8 weeks we were doing snapshot drops. Now we're doing it roughly every 3 months. And you know, I know Moon and her team have been begging me to give them dates further in advance. And we're going to try to do that. We're like, this week alone, we've been going over dates, which we haven't even announced to most of the team. So I see Henry down there and Gary and Jason. So Monday, I think internally we're going to announce like, hey, I think this is the date that we're launching the next one. And then as soon as we sort of build confidence in that internally, then I think we can start talking about like messaging that publicly more in advance than we have in the past.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah, that's a very reasonable answer. I didn't know, given it's so hard with it being so public, how do you even really put that out there? But from playing the game consistently almost every day, having some kind of date in mind would get me excited even more. That's all. But
yeah,
that's awesome.
So
I really
soon.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks,
awesome. Man. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, guys.
Volspur.
Howdy. Very excited you guys brought these back. I've been missing the AMAs. I enjoy these a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you can blame me. Lucy tries to get me to do them every day, and I'm busy.
It creates a lot of hype around the game, and I love it. My first question was about Sector 3. My questions kind of interlooped with each other, but is Sector 3 is it finished? is the size of the map finished? Basically, are you guys gonna continue to add on more to it? Like I saw at the bottom of the map, there's like a little gated off thing and a bridge to somewhere else. I don't know if that's another sector, or if you guys plan on adding more to Sector 3. Because I love the map. If the game feels great, but with all the hype when we first joined this community, it's always talking about the massive. It's going to be so huge, and my other question is kind of help my question with this, but it still feels kind of small compared to the hype of how huge we were talking about, how big it's going to be and whatnot. That's my first question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to give you a little insight into the development of Sector 3, right? So that gated off area that you see at the bottom was not originally gated off. So that whole island that you see that all those shipping containers and stuff are going to, like the compacted dust, those gold squares on that conveyor belt. So they're all going to the processing hub, right? Which is on the other side of Sector 3. The original map design that Brad did, all of that was playable space. Everything in that area, that entire island on the other side, the mixer, all of that stuff was playable space. So it was massive, right? Now, what we were finding in playtesting at that scale was that, like, even with 36 people, like, engagements were few and far between, right? Like, you would spend so much time just looting by yourself, not being shot at, not running into people, and then there were a few choke points that you would get hit by people. And so we decided, like, hey, let's block it off. Let's basically cut the map in half, because there were originally 3 islands, which you could still see the shells of them in the map right now. And you could run, like, those conveyor belts that go to those islands, you could run that whole way. There was also a tram system that would move between islands, and then you get these really cool firefights of when the trams would pass each other, and then, like, it was like a pirate ship moment of people jumping from tram to tram. So the short answer is, yes, that was originally all Sector 3. Then we blocked it off, cut the map in half for gameplay reasons, just to keep the intensity high. And basically what I said, just like I said earlier in one of my answers about creative mode, is like, hey, if we add this and everybody loves it, nobody even mentions like a map editor, then we're not going to spend time on a map editor. Same thing happened with Sector 3, right? Quinn's like, hey, we need to cut this down because engagements need to happen more quickly and in more frequency. And so let's limit the size of the sector. Let's see what people think. Right? If nobody even mentions that other island or even thinks about if it could be bigger, then why would we spend time doing it? The fact that you're bringing it up right now, right, is exactly what we were looking for. It's like, let's see if anyone notices and cares, right? Let's see how they feel about the current engagement size. And then we will make a decision based on that. So we already have a bigger sector designed. It's already done. It's not arted to the degree that Sector 3 is currently arted. But we could very easily decide in the next snapshot of like, hey, let's double the size of Sector 3 and add another sector, right? So that is in the cards if you guys are interested in it. Currently, that's not the plan. Currently, and just because we don't hide anything, currently the feeling is we kind of like the size of Sector 3. And it feels good. So maybe we just move on to another sector and then see how that feels. And then another sector, right? And then get to 7 sectors, feel what the pacing feels like with that, and then decide if sectors need to be bigger. Right? Like right now, I'm not sure the direction to go if we keep iterating on the size of one sector, or we start sort of seeing what sector to sector gameplay feels like. Because the moment that, you don't have to extract out of Sector 3, and like out of the session entirely, and you could just go to another sector, that's going to change the entire pacing and meta of the game. Right? When the Rising Freeze gets to the top and you don't have to extract, you could just be like, all right, I'm going to bone out to Sector 4, right? Or I'm going to drop down to Sector 2 because it's still open. That's going to change how Sector 3 plays in a big way.
That's awesome. That puts I can't stop grinning. I knew it. I knew it was too small. I was like, wait a second.
You know what I'm excited for is like I'm excited for once creative mode is there. There is nothing stopping us from just releasing the full Sector 3, the untruncated version, in creative mode and letting people play around with it and seeing what they think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, no, I definitely understand from a gameplay point of view because the way the gameplay feels right is really great. The interactions are good. It's definitely more aggressive for a looter shooter, I would say. Like when you play Escape from Tarkov, there's like times where there's 15 minutes of nothing, of just hiding almost. Depends on how you play it, obviously, but you know, I think that creates a good uniqueness for this game. But
you know what,
that's really awesome.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of like I remember when I first got GoldenEye 64 on a Nintendo 64, and you're on that dam level, and you get the sniper rifle, and you look out at those buildings that are like on the inside of the dam, and like I spent hours, days trying to figure out how to get out there because I'm like, why would it be there? Why would it exist if I can't get there? I constantly wondered if it was a playable space.
Yeah, from the seconds when I was in Texas, and well, I guess I currently still am, but when I was at the event, that's the first thing I thought. I was like, I don't know, that something doesn't feel right. No, that's really awesome. And the other question I had was kind of with it was just like you keep saying, you keep going to other sectors, and the field kind of, like you said, it's going to be like 100 players and all the sectors combined. How are you guys going to combine the sectors? So with now it's what, I don't know how long the games are, like 20 minutes. You can extract like 6 minutes in or whatever. How are you guys going to combine those, and how are you going to go from sector to sector? Because now it feels like, what the game feels like now is you're going to be in your hub, you select what sector you go to, and you extract and you come back to your hub. But if you go sector to sector, do you extract and you go to another sector? And how long do you have to play and go to other sectors before you can actually extract and go home? Or how fast can you just get right back to your base when you're playing all the sectors?
So right now the pacing will work out the same way that it does now, which is, so say in a session there's seven, like future looking, right? There's 7 sectors, right? When you start the match, all 7 sectors are open. So you're getting to the tower, you're deciding which sector you want to go into, you infill into that sector. So, you know, say there's 100 people and they're spread out across 7 sectors. Now, at runtime, the game decides in what order those sectors are going to shut down. And it's going to be different every single time, right? So say like, oh, you enter the tower and then the game has decided in that session, Sector 3 is going to shut down first, right? So a couple minutes into the match, the sector shutdown sequence begins, the rising freeze starts, players start either extracting out, and as you know in Sector 3, you can either find a mag gate from the beginning and extract out almost instantly if you find a mag gate, mag lock, or you have to wait until, you know, the helicopter comes in or the zip line opens, and if you miss both of those, then you have to wait for the Superlift, right? But when other sectors are there, you could just leave the sector and not leave the game, right? You're just moving to another sector that is open. And then at some point, based on the, you know, the proceduralness of that session, then that new sector that you're in will shut down at some point. And it will decide it in an order so that players are never segmented, right? The ideal is like you should always be able to get to the other players. And not be like cut off where like half the player base is in the lower section and half in the other top. Those are the challenges we're going to be figuring out as we introduce sector to sector gameplay. But the general thinking is the sectors will shut down one at a time, forcing players into other sectors. And when you're in that sector, you can extract out once the shutdown sequence begins. But then which extraction points are open is going to depend on a number of things, right? Based on like, you know, just like they are now. Like, you know, helicopter opens up 2 minutes in, maglocks are always open, but you have to find them. Some extractions might require equipment, right? We teased the wingsuit stuff and somebody asked about it earlier. So there's going to be a number of things at play there.
That's really awesome. I'm super excited. That's super cool. All right, one more thing, just a little quick. Since Quinn's not here, and you might be able to answer this. What sectors is Brad currently working on right now?
Man, what sector is he working on? I don't know.
You don't
Listen,
know?
I try not to talk to Brad. That's my
Damn.
goal.
That's unlucky. Well, cool. I appreciate this very much, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Cool. Thanks, man. Let me knock out some of the AMAs, the text ones. I could probably do that pretty quick. I keep scrolling up. I'm trying not to miss people. We might have 30 more minutes with this. All right. How many of the 7 sections will be playable before final release? I want all 7. Like I like the design is for 7 sectors. So I don't want to launch the game without 7 sectors because like a lot of it hinges on that. Young Squeezy, can you share any details on how tokenomics will work in game? Blah, blah, blah. No, I cannot. The short answer is no. It's a whole thing. Okay, Siege OC says, will there be left-handed model option in the next snapshot? Settings are important when it comes to consistency, like switching from a Valorant to DEADROP. A left-handed model provides more options for the player. People that are right-eye dominant would benefit from a left-handed model, and a current right-handed model left-eye dominant people benefit from. I'm coming at this from a competitive standpoint. That's a good question. In the next snapshot, probably not, but it is definitely a good feature and feedback. And is Henry still in here? Because I think it's definitely going to have animation impact. No, that's good feedback and something that we'll definitely look at if it's something that you want us to prioritize. Right now, it is not a priority. I can tell you that. Like, it is not on the list of things that we're implementing currently. But if it should be a higher priority, that is good to know. When will other players be able to create and share their own custom maps, skins, and game modes with others? As soon as creative mode is done. So it'll be coming in stages, as I said. We're currently working on it now. It will not be in Snapshot 6. I can tell you that right now. A lot of the back-end support and work for it will be done during Snapshot 6, but it will not be ready to use in Snapshot 6. How is the enemy AI coming along? I already talked about that. It's coming along fantastic. We're playtesting it right now. Caramel says, squads have been a hot topic in the community since the launch of SS5. Would love to know if you guys plan on fast-tracking that feature for snapshots during the year of expansion. Yes. The short answer is yes. We do plan on fast-tracking squads based on the feedback from the community. Mr. Spaceman says, is there an ETA on AI? We're playtesting it right now, my man. Is it planned for players to be able to activate sector shutdowns? That is an ideal that we've tossed around. We do not know yet. Right now, I think sector shutdowns, for the most part, are going to be procedurally decided by the game, for lack of a better word, during each section. But there might be in-sector limited shutdown or events that can be triggered by players. That's what we've been talking about. So, like, maybe you can activate a specific extraction point, and then that causes a certain area to shut down, or maybe there's a limited shutdown you could do in order to trap people in an area. We have talked about stuff like that. Will there be any benefits to the original 500 founders? You mean the 500, like the 500 airdrop people who completed the ARG? That's a good question. I mean, they're some of our most hardcore earliest people, what we call day zero people. So I don't know. There will be things for them. I don't know how you classify benefits. Like advantages over normal people? I don't know, but like cool perks? Probably yes. Will player customization be akin to games like Fortnite with base skins or Halo with item for item customization? So you mean customize your player? So it's going to be, there's a number of ways we're doing it, and Darren's designing it all out right now. So I don't want to sort of say something that is like contradictory to what he's doing, because he's actively making a lot of decisions on that right now. But the general idea is that it is more customized than Fortnite skins. Like, it's not one skin for an entire thing. a little bit more granular than that, but not necessarily one-to-one item for item. What is the current plan for seasonal content? Will it bring new? Yes, the current plan is to have seasonal content that is roughly every 90 days that sort of introduces new themes of items and maybe even sectors. The sectors are being built out in a Lego style manner so that they are interchangeable. So if we want to do like a cool limited event where like sector 3 changes to something completely new, we could do that. We could also do an entire seasonal event where the whole tower changes or just certain sectors change, or events happen that sort of change the sectors over time. All of that's on the table, and we're planning to do it seasonally. How customizable is the hideout going to be? Great question. It is definitely going to be customizable. Everybody who has a tower key has already earned their first hideout item. And there's going to be a lot more of that. There's going to be ways that you can tailor your hideout to your style and display your stuff, like all the visor cortexes that you found, sticking them in helmets that you have display, stuff like that. Changing the layout of the hideout, I don't know if we're going that far, but possibly. We have talked about I bet some people are losing their minds right now. We have talked about, giving you the ability to sort of build your hideout in creative mode and use that as your hideout, but that would probably be a far ways off. Like that would be after map editor and all that stuff. But initially, the core base hideout, we want you to be able to personalize it visually, at least. Display stuff, customize the looks of it a little bit, but not necessarily change the layout of it. I know this is not up to you, but how's the Xbox PlayStation talks going? It's going! I just finished a lot of documentation for Xbox specifically last night that is pushing us forward to the next gate. And then I'm trying. I want the console build so bad right now. But we're moving forward in a big way with them right now. Will lore be implemented before the launch in a large way? That's something we're debating a lot, right? Because the game team is like charging ahead with like features. So like working on like implementing some of the lore stuff as we go right now, like as it makes sense. Like for example, right? If we're gonna add NPCs, you kind of need lore with those NPCs. Things like Space Bob, things like the cleaners. So it's sort of being implemented on a case-by-case basis based on the features that are going into the game. And then each sector does have lore associated with it. It's just until we can start arting them properly, that's not going to be super apparent. So it'll be a while before the lore is super apparent unless you're following along with all the breadcrumbs that I'm hiding in the variant guides and the comic books and stuff like that. Will there be another ARG? Is the ARG canon in any way? The ARG has become canon in a lot of things. So the ARG is essentially, we call it the CC protocol. It's the Claws Combat Protocol. It is the way the variants identify claws to become potential variants is the sort of lore, right? So CC protocol was a program, a simulation that was built by somebody, Midnight Protocol, to identify potential variants is how it was used literally in real life and is also how it's used in the lore. And I have been exploring another ARG, and I have taken some steps towards it, but we'll see. Can there be larger sectors in the future? There could be. Sector 3 could be larger right now if we wanted it to be. You let me know. All right, that was a lot. That was all. That was 10 questions for one person. Can we provide any hints or clues about the undiscovered Easter eggs or secrets in the games? Any plans to add more? Yes, there will constantly be new Easter eggs. No, I cannot tell you about them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be Easter eggs. So happy you're doing the same anime. Thanks, Narnia. All right, answer that one. Are editing keybinds going to be included in future update? Yes, it is. We've been working on it for a while. It's just the UI work has been the holdup, but Kevin's been knocking it out. Mr. Gump, how will sector to sector gameplay work? Sector 1 to 7 in a single game. I talked about it a little bit, but the general idea is that you would, you don't have to extract it out of the game session. You would leave to another sector, and then you would be in that sector with everybody else who's in that sector. But we're figuring that out now. That's one of the major focuses right now is figuring out that traversal between 2 sectors. Pluto said he is really busy last week. Does that mean player economy is going to be in the next snapshot? Oh, Pluto, stop telling people about your schedule. You're leaking just by being busy. MCAD, has there been any unexpected responses to Snapshot 5? Unexpected? There's been a lot of really good feedback that is helping us make decisions for future snapshots. The nice thing is like the sectors are always supposed to be very diverse from one another, right? So how the game plays in Snapshot 3 should be pretty different in the next sector, right? Sector 3. How it plays in Sector 3 should feel very different than how it plays in another sector, so that you have that variety of like CQB, long sight lines, like high intensity, like sort of more chill sectors. That's what we're going for. Okay, what else? Helmet Fire says, could something like the wingsuit be in the game as a consumable, a one-time use, jump jetpacks, wingsuit? It could. Yeah, we're like, I think there's going to be a variety of type of gadgets, and some of them will be persistent. Some of them will be, persistent until you lose it, for example. Some of them will be persistent until you use it. Some of them could, there's a lot of different ways that we can use gadgets, and each of them will have their own design to it. Wretch says, do you see any form of crafting trading being built into the game relatively soon beyond weapon modding? I'm not sure. Like, crafting is a big word that could mean a lot of things. Right now, it's mostly focused on customizing your weapon with attachments and stuff like that. We have talked about giving use to every piece of loot item, like having currently there's floppy disks and obelisks and things in the game. We are talking about things that you can do with those, right? And I could very see the slippery slope of that leading into some sort of limited crafting with some of those items. But we have not committed to crafting right now. Will there be armor mods like there are weapon mods? That's a good question. Currently, there are not armor mods, but I like that idea. I could definitely see stuff we can do with armor mods. So if you have more ideas on that, please send it our way. Let us know. Lays Liquor says, hey, Rob, thanks for taking the time to answer the question. Curious on the future plans on making the hideout more personalized, ideally customized. Yes. So not only customizing your hideout, but we've also talked about the concept of having team hideouts, which is a hideout that you share with specific other claws, right? So you say this is my team, not like your squad, right? A squad is impromptu. A squad is like, hey, me and these other people are going to play this one session. A team would be more of a persistent thing, like, hey, me and these people are always connected, even if we're not playing together right now, and we all want to contribute to the same stuff. We have talked about concepts of that. Is there plans to have hideout areas unlocked through quests or key cards that you can loot in game? That's a good question. I'm not going to answer. I feel like that's getting into cool stuff I don't want to talk about right now. Any plans on a practice match where you can learn the map without worrying about losing? All that stuff, like practice match stuff, like that will probably live in creative mode outside of the core experience. Nothing's stopping people from creating cool practice run areas. Like somebody could take every sector and turn it into a firing range, right? And publish that as its own mode eventually. Any updates on console certs? Progress. Last night made a lot of progress. I see a lot of new anti-cheat AI engines now. Do you think you'll start incorporating it? Yes, I do think AI anti-cheat is going to be one of the many tools we use in our anti-cheat tool belts, but it will not be the only silver bullet. There's a lot of stuff we're doing on server side. There's a lot of stuff that we won't talk about specifically to sort of handle that. 024, love that name. Is it possible to exit the bag if we press WASD? Kind of sucks. Oh, so that's a really good feedback. So at the Texas events, when we did the showdown between Crim6 and Stone Mountain and Doc and Z-Laner and everybody. Dr. Lupo, like as soon as he walked off stage, he grabbed Ryan Thompson, one of our gameplay engineers, and like I stumbled into the conversation, but he had like so much feedback specifically about this, specifically about getting in and out of looting state while in combat or taking fire. And he had a lot of really good ideas. We also had a lot of variants submit really good ideas on how to address that in the future. And I know Ryan is working on stuff for updating that. And a lot of the stuff we were talking about was like the ability to leave the looting state of the container, but still have your backpack open and engage in fighting. And a lot of other stuff like ways to enter and exit out of looting state during combat, but still have the ability to like, you know, start your turn and start your target acquisition, even if you can't fire yet. So short answer is yes, we're looking at and iterating on sort of entering and exiting a looting state based on your feedback, player feedback, and a lot of stuff that Dr. Lupo had said at the event. Are there any plans for larger sectors and higher player counts? If we want it, we definitely could. We designed it originally as larger. We just need to decide if that is going to feel better. Will the giant elevator be able to be called earlier in any updated? Potentially. If you're talking about the Superlift, if the Superlift remains an extraction point, or if it might turn into like a way to get to the sector above and not be an extraction out of the tower at all in the future. So if that's the case, I could definitely imagine being called instead of it being on a timer like it currently is. Is the movement looting system close to finalized? No, not at all. Like that movement and looting is something that we're going to iterate on, just like we were talking about, like getting out of a looting state in combat. That's something that we're going to iterate on throughout development based on feedback, because every single time we add a sector, every single time we add a new type of extraction, new type of movement, the meta is going to change, and we're going to have to iterate on it. It's going to have ripple effects through every other design decision we made up to that point. So no. Staying finalized now, like we have many snapshots to go before it is final. Spicy Dingle. Is there anything currently in development that you and the team are mostly excited about? Yeah, the vehicle stuff. Like I am so fucking hyped on vehicle stuff. Like you have no idea. That is what I'm most excited for. Oh, Killer Choices. Can you talk about vehicle customization and what we can expect in terms? Highly customizable. I'll put it that way. Highly customizable. It is going to be as much of your identity in the game as your character is. What do you think about the ability to call in drones to extract only loot? A lot of people have suggested this, and I kind of like it. Right now, we've talked about it and experiment with it as a gadget. So not as like a default feature that everybody has all the time, but like in that gadget category, which is like maybe you can find one of these drones, or maybe you can, you know, build one of these drones or something that lets you do this on a one-time basis, right? And then you'd have to find another one or something like that. So we have talked about it in the gadget area, but not as a default ability. Question: How being a Syn can affect the raid? Is it also a respawn type, or is Syn? Do you need to infill in the game again? So Syns are your respawn mechanic for entering the same game that you are in. Currently, Syns are the only way to re-enter the same session. Extracting, dying, anything else, you would be joining a new session. So Syns are your way to infill the exact same session that you died in. I missed a bit of the creative mode talk earlier. Is it planning to be something similar to Fortnite creative or akin to Steam Workshop? Kind of both. The in-game creative mode, the stuff that you can do in-game, is more akin to like Forge, like creating custom modes, creating building stuff out of custom creations. The actual custom creations would be more like Fortnite creative mode, where the ideal is you have a editor outside of the game that you build and import and publish stuff in that you can then use in creative mode. That's the general thinking. Oh, Modern Warzone, man. Good to see you. Any plans on letting me cast a DEADROP event with Katie? That's a very selfish question, Doug. How dare you? Yes. Come cast the next event. It'd be fun. You're supposed to be in Texas.
Hey, how are y'all?
Great. How are you?
Good. So I've been streaming this, by the way, and at least for me on my end, we heard everything you said, Rob. It looked like some people might not have, but I guess that's
Discord's
Discord
weird,
for you, right?
man.
Yeah, Discord's
Yeah.
weird. Hey, so I'll always start this off by saying thanks for all y'all's hard work and everything you do. We absolutely love the dedication from Midnight Society and what y'all do for this community. So thanks for that. I always like to point that out. And my question is, I was talking with Joker yesterday, and we were talking about. So the question came up to me, and I've been asked by some people about if Midnight Society, or rather DEADROP, if DEADROP is going to be a free-to-play game, how are you guys planning on monetizing? Now, the context to that is you see other competitor games and how they practice their monetizing, how they practice monetization for their games. And, and it's kind of a controversial, very polarizing point. And one thing I offered up as it could be, but I want some feedback from you on this, is if there is going to be an NFT layer where items in game that are bought from the store versus extracted out of game, if those are all going to be NFTs, the one thing about NFTs I do know is that you as the creator can assign a royalty. So every time that gets resold, you make some money on it. So do you think that that's a way or something that Midnight Society is looking at as a form of monetization? And what are some other ideas that you guys had? Because of, obviously y'all have to make some money to pay these fine folks for the hard work they do. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, right now our thoughts are very traditional on monetization, right? Things like battle pass, seasonal content, cosmetics in game, right? Customizing your character, buying weapon skins, doing all of that stuff. So the core game mode, DEADROP, the vertical extraction shooter that we're all playing right now and that we're building. Hold on, let me tell my son to. All right, there we go. So a lot of the core game mode stuff is going to be focused around that, right? Like character cosmetics, weapon cosmetics, buying a battle pass, so that you can progress and unlock stuff. So a lot of traditional sort of free to play monetization there. Where it gets really interesting is on all the UGC stuff, like all the creative mode stuff, the stuff where like you, the community, are making stuff and publishing it. That's the stuff I think is really interesting, and we're figuring all that out, like the best way to monetize that and make it one legal and fair and fun for everybody without distracting or minimizing or even worse, being detrimental to the core game mode that everybody else is playing, and needs to be fair and fun and competitive first and foremost. And Helmet Fire just died. But hopefully I answered his question before he disappeared.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering if you knew when the next in-person event would be, like where it would be at, or when you guys have a general idea of.
Not yet. I will say I am hoping to do something around Snapshot 7, because Snapshot 7 has some big features that are like in-person event worthy, but we're not committed. There's so much logistics and other partners that have to be aligned on it's not up to me solely, like most things.
Vegas sounds like a good idea. Vegas?
Yeah. Hey, the feature set I'm pushing for Snapshot 7 is very Vegas friendly, so I'm not opposed to it.
You keep up the good work. Thanks for everything.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Well, listen to this sultry voice.
Oh, thank you.
Got the perfect microphone.
But yeah, let me go by starting off. Thank you for having me, and also thanks for hosting this. And I love it whenever you do this. And I woke up just in time to catch this. And you had some great points on the AI and everything. And I want to say you pretty much knocked everything that I was going to ask out of the water. But
Nice.
they do have one singular left. Sector 1, the plans on that for integration, and when might we see that?
For Sector 1?
Yeah, ARG days.
Oh, man. It's a good question. I don't know when Sector 1's coming online. I can tell you it is not current. It's not currently the next sector Brad is working on. So, but I do not know what will be after that.
Okay.
But we're figuring out now. I will tell you, if you are familiar with the ARG, there are elements that were originally Sector 1 that have become a different sector that Brad is working on. So there might be elements that you want from Sector 1 that are present in the next sector, but not Sector 1 technically.
So with the whole ARG with Sector 1, is the train state is it like metro
Subway?
metro
Yeah.
subway? Will that be contained as an exfil possibly, maybe?
That is the feature I was talking about. That is the feature that has been carved out of Sector 1 and seems to make more sense in another sector.
All right. That's all I needed to know. I'm glad, because that's where I almost bled out and died. Luckily, I exfilled that day. I came in, Cozy was playing, a bunch of other people were on, and they're like, "Yeah, let's go into the ARG and see what happens." We all went in, we all muted. I nearly bled out, and I crawled down the stairs and then went to the area, and then it said you have a bunch of variants like snickering and laughing at you while you approach and crawl your way onto the train. It was really fun. I had so much more fun playing that ARG than actually playing any other game for like a few months. Like it was so much fun. And I can't thank you guys enough for doing that, because it got me out of a nice dark hole that time.
Nice. That's good to hear, man,
Yeah.
because we spent a lot of hours writing that ARG. So me and Nick, Lucy at like 3 a.m. watching everybody play it after we spent all day writing and programming it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much.
Cool.
And
Thanks, man.
Lobby, thank you.
Yo, what's going on?
Yo.
So I just want to talk about the controller support a little bit. I know everyone wants more controller support. I definitely do. And I go in, I kill Lucy, I kill Brad, I'll kill Tuck. And I feel like it's all luck based, but you said it was my game at the event, and I feel like it's not my game without more controller support. So is there going to be any minor updates in the middle of the snapshot, early next snapshot?
In the during this snapshot, I don't know if there will be another patch during this snapshot unless something major comes along. But controller gameplay is something that's constantly being iterated on. I know Jim is always working on it based on feedback. So especially if you are a controller player, which I know you are, like send as much feedback as possible, because Jim desperately needs it. We have decided to start doing some controller only playtests to help us sort of just hone in even more and more rapidly, right? It's much easier if everybody is playing on controller and facing the same frustrations than if like half of them are playing on keyboard and only a few are trying to play on controller. So there are a lot of updates coming on aim assist and the stickiness of it and the dead zone and all that stuff that makes controllers feel good. So you'll definitely notice a lot of improvements every single snapshot, but probably no more patches in between this snapshot and the next.
Okay, and then another one that a lot of people are asking about low settings for the snapshots. To put on low, so that way we can actually reach higher frames. Is that going to be coming next snapshot, you think?
Potentially. So we hired a whole team, our core tech team, that came on during the development of the last snapshot, and most of their focus, besides the UGC creative mode stuff, is on optimization, performance issues. And so they've been working a lot, and they're the ones, it's their work almost directly that is going to impact once we're able to use like a highly optimized low setting. But that has so many tentacles, man. Like a lot of it is lighting, a lot of it is like they're literally going through and doing analysis on every feature of the game and engine, and then tackling it one by one, right? Like I know a big thing they're working on now is all the lighting and stuff. To increase the performance. So it is coming, but that is one of those things that it's literally mission by mission.
Awesome. And one last one, the final one, the biggest and most important question of all. When are we getting some Spaceball merch?
Yeah. let me add them to the game first, man.
You could do both at the same time. It'd be a great reveal. Oh, look at this merch drop. You guys know what that means, right? Like, I'm just saying. Just throwing it out there.
I feel you. Let's figure out what he really looks like first.
Ooh, Spaceball face reveal?
I'm not going that far.
All right, thank you.
See ya. All right. Well, that was great. Hopefully we can do more of these more often. It reminds me of Twitter Spaces, but like more intimate because like I recognize every single person here because they're all part of this Discord. Oh, this is great. I promise to fight Lucy less on when she asked me to do these. Nice. All right. Thanks, everybody. I have to run to this meeting.